Today we're starting Chapter 3, Lesson 1, Percent of a Number. Percent is that little percent sign. Kind of looks like a slash with a zero on top and bottom. Of means to multiply. And number, it looks like a hashtag, but it's a number sign. So percent of a number means percent times some number. To do this, you either express the percent as a decimal or as a fraction, then multiply. So for example 1, we have 25% of 300. First, let's multiply as a decimal. So 25% as a decimal would be 0.25 times 300. Be sure not to get lost in those zeros. It helps that when you're finished with one number, you put a zero down, cross it out. And then I need to move the decimal over 2 spaces because there's 2 spaces behind the decimal. So that makes 75. Now let's try multiplying as a fraction. It's not that difficult because you know how to simplify. So 25% would mean 25 over 100 because percent means over 100. So this is 25 over 100 times 300. And that 300 is going to need a 1 under it. Then we need to simplify. So 100 and 300 can both be divided by 100. So 100 becomes 1 and 300 becomes 3. Then we go straight across. 25 times 3 makes 75. And 1 times 1 makes 1. And 75 over 1 is just 75, which is exactly what we got before. Now let's look at example 2. 4/5% of 500. Well, let's first try multiplying as a decimal. What's 4/5 as a percent? 4/5, that'd be 0.8%. And to change it to a decimal, we have to move it 2 spaces. So that would be 0.008 because I moved it 2 spaces times 500. And then since we have 3 spaces behind the decimal, I'm going to need 3 in my answer. So this would equal 4. Let's try multiplying it as a fraction. %4 as a fraction would be 4/5 over 100. That looks a little bit different. We might need to fix that before we try to do anything else. 4/5 over 100 is really 4/5 divided by 100. And we would need to do our rules for dividing fractions, which would be keep, change, flip. So we keep the 4/5, we change division to multiplication, and then we flip Now we need to simplify. 4 and 100 can both be divided by 4. So 4 divided by 4 makes 1. And 100 divided by 4 makes 25. Then straight across, 1 times 1 is 1. 5 times 25 is 125. So really, 4/5% is equal to 1 over 125. We still have to multiply times the 500 though. So we have 1 and 120 over 125 times 500. And we need to put a 1 under there. Now we can simplify 125 and 500. They can both be divided by 5. They can also both be divided by 25, so let's go with that one. 125 divided by 25 would be 5. And then think how many quarters would be in $5. 20. So now 1 times 20 makes 20. 5 times 1 makes 5. And 20 divided by 5 is 4, which is the same thing we got when we did it as a decimal. You can use whichever way is easiest for you today on the worksheet. If you missed any of that, there is a copy of the notes on the website. Just need to Google Mrs. Carr, JMS, and you'll find all of these worksheets, including these notes for today. You need the Chapter 3, Lesson 1, Guided Practice, Percent of a Number worksheet out of your binder. The directions say to use the table that shows the percent of the blood types of 145 donors during a recent blood drive. So there's 145 donors. That's going to be important. And each of these in the table is a percent. So this is 45%, 40%, 11%, and 4%. All of those are percents. Even though they didn't put the percent sign, they put the word. Let's look at number 1. It says to determine how many donors had type B blood, round to the nearest whole number. Anytime we're dealing with people or animals, we usually round to the whole number because we don't want to have a part of a living thing. So how many donors had type B? That would be 11%. So it's 11% of 145. That means 11% times 145. So 145, and what would 11% be as a decimal? 0.11. Just assuming that you want to write that as a decimal. So go ahead and work that out. And we have 2 spaces behind the decimal, so we're going to have 2 in our answer. And we want to round that to the nearest whole number. So we look next door to the whole number, and there's a 9, so we're going to round up. That would make 16 donors. Number 2, how many donors were either A or B? That doesn't mean AB. It means how many were A or B. So there were 40% that were A and another 11% that were B, or means I need to add those together. So that's 51%. But to figure out how many donors, we're going to need to find 51% of those 145 donors. Remember, of means to multiply. So 145 times 0.51. Remember, we always move the decimal 2 spaces when we're dealing with percent. And go ahead and work that out. You should have gotten 73.95. And again, we're dealing with humans, so we want to round that to the nearest whole number. So that would round to 74 donors. Number 3. How many donors did not have type O blood? Round to the nearest whole number if necessary. Now there's 2 different ways we could do this. We could add up all of the ones that aren't O. That would be A and B and AB. Or for it to be a percent always adds up to 100. So we could just subtract what O was. Either way you do that, you should get 55%. So 55% did not have type O. And we want to find 55% of 145. That means 145 times, move the decimal 2 spaces, 0.55. Go ahead and work that out. You should have gotten 79.75. And again, we're dealing with humans, so we want to round that to the nearest whole number. So that's going to round to 80. 80 donors. Number 4. Which blood type had less than 10 donors? Well, it's really not that hard of a question because less than 10 donors, not less than 10%. So we know probably type AB because AB has 4%. So we need to find 4% of 145. So 145 times, if we move the decimal 2 spaces, that would be 0.04. Which gets me 5.80, which rounds to 6 donors. 6 is less than 10, so it's type AB. Number 5, 35% of 20 is what number? Of means multiply, so you're just multiplying 0.35 times 20. Go ahead and work that out. Don't forget when you get the answer, you need to move the decimal over 2 spaces because there's 2 decimal spaces behind the decimal. So this is 7. Number 6. 380% of 30 is what number? And yes, sometimes they are more than 100%. Like when stores are marking up prices, they go more than 100%. We still move the decimal 2 spaces, so that would be 3.80 times 30. I might drop that last 0 there because it's behind the decimal. So this is 3.8 times 30. Go ahead and work that out. When we did this problem, there was only 1 space behind the decimal, so we need to just move the decimal over 1 space. That makes our answer 114. So basically, you're just changing it to a decimal and multiplying. Number 9 on the back says, suppose there are 20 questions on a multiple choice test. If 25% of the answers are choice B, how many of the answers are not choice B? Again, all the questions should add up to 100%. So if 25% are B, how many would not be B? And whatever answer you get there, then you multiply it times 20. You'll need to finish this on your own.